Hello and welcome to another video from the only channel you need to not only survive the current apocalypse but actually enjoy it. And a while back when I made the announcement that I was going to be sleeping out in a tent from now on, I said that I would try my best to keep a daily video log of some of my activities. One of the things I end up doing every day is cooking. Now, I don't live in the tent. I just sleep in the tent. I do most of my living up in my house where my oven and my microwave are. So it'd be very easy for me to just press a few buttons and have a meal. There is a little bit of extra effort required to cook with a solar cooker. However, depending on what kind of wages you normally earn, my time and my extra time would be equal to about 10 cents a meal. I'm pretty sure that the amount of money I would spend on electricity or gas would be about $1 for some of them meals. So it's really financially better to cook in a solar cooker, even if you're taking into consideration that your time is money. Today's solar meal is going to be red beans. With beans, everybody pretty much knows you need to soak them overnight so that they don't take as long to cook the next day and don't require as much energy. With a solar cooker, the energy isn't an issue at all. So if you ain't worried about time, you can put dry beans straight into the pot, put the pot out into the cooker, and just leave it all day and bring them in the evening. A lot of people believe, and I think they believe mistakenly, that if you soak your beans and then wash your beans, that it eliminates gas. But I've been eating beans all my life. I've eaten them from people that thoroughly wash their beans, and I've also eaten them this way. Just put them in the pot and cook them and retain all of whatever cooks out of them. And I don't see any difference whatsoever, so I think that's a myth. You don't need to be washing your food after you cook it. Most of the nutrients that are in food are boiled out of the food. So if you wash away the water that you boil your food in, you're generally washing away the nutrients. Now the items I have up here that I'm going to put in my beans: celery, bell pepper, and onions, salt, pepper, and garlic powder are staples around here. We use this for pretty much everything. It's just good basic ingredients for nearly anything you want to make in order to add flavor and color. But we'll be putting this out in the solar cooker right now, and we'll add some kind of a piece of meat. In general, we use sausage if we have it, but if we haven't got sausage, we'll throw just about anything we have in there. Leg quarter, chicken leg quarter, throw it in there and let it cook while the beans are cooking, and then just pick it off of the bone later. Before leaving the kitchen, I went ahead and added one more ingredient to our beans, and that's the sausage you see sitting on top. And the reason I've got it on top is it's raw sausage. I want to cut it up, break it up, put it in the beans, but you really shouldn't do that until the sausage is cooked. So we're going to leave it on top, come back in a little while, cut it into slices, and if the beans are almost done, we'll go ahead and throw it in there. Normally, I'll add smoked sausage, which is already cooked, but when I do, I normally wait till the beans are almost done before putting it in. Otherwise, your sausage is going to become overcooked before the beans are ready. Now that the sausage is cooked enough to hold itself together, I'm going to go ahead and cut them up, and then I'll set them aside and put them back in the beans when the beans are a little bit closer to done. Oh yeah, that's done. And there you have it, a delicious pot of red beans, and there is absolutely no significant difference between these red beans and red beans that I would have slow cooked in the house, other than the fact that these beans required no store-bought energy in order to be cooked. Today's solar meal is going to be refried beans or bean dip. Traditionally, when you make authentic Mexican refried beans, you're supposed to add Mexican seasonings like epazote, and you're supposed to use lard or butter or some kind of fat. For me, I'm just trying to make a bean dip. All I'm going to do is put these in the solar cooker and cook them until they turn to mush. What you see on top is some dehydrated onions, pepper, salt, garlic powder. Nothing really fresh, just dried beans that are about to be cooked into a dip. Whenever you're making beans to be used as a dip, you don't want to have too much water, because if they're soupy and you're using them to dip nacho chips or crackers in it, then that's not going to work. So I keep water out here just to keep it hydrated just enough that it doesn't get dried out. But we really don't want these soupy. And you'll see me doing a lot of things with beans, because beans take so much energy, and today we're going to be overcooking the beans, so it's going to even take more energy. I'll do this with all different kinds of beans, including garbanzos, which when you make bean dip with garbanzos, it's called hummus, and they have all kinds of special seasonings you're supposed to use for that as well, but I just do the same thing. It's garlic, salt, pepper, that kind of stuff. There you have it, our bean dip, or refried beans, whatever you want to call it. We'll be having this with nacho chips tonight, and in the next couple of days we'll make something with some wraps, fajita wraps. Today's solar dish is going to be made with some of the stuff we made in our last solar dish, which is our bean dip or refried beans. And we're going to put them on a tortilla wrap and make us some solar tortillas. Now if you look, you can see that the bean dip I made, or refried beans I made, is actually quite chunky, because I don't smash mine up to the consistency of regular store-bought refried beans. Now I'm going to put cheese on this. When the cheese melts, it actually holds the thing together. I used to think that these wraps, you could just take and use them like bread, you know, make a sandwich with them. But they have to be cooked, because I think they're raw, but if they're not raw, they at least ain't edible until you bake them, or some people put them in a skillet and just cook them with no oil. Just kind of throw them in there real hot and let them sit there for a minute and then flip them over. But we're going to put ours in the solar cooker, get them cooked for free. And I've actually never done this before. I eat on my solar cooker probably every single sunny day. But I've never done tortillas out there. And we've done a whole lot of really radical stuff. In fact, you'll see that as this series goes on, because we're going to put it all together in one video. And the thing that I'm using is like the same exact size as the dish, or the tray, in my solar cooker. So it fits in there perfectly, and the wraps seem to be fitting in there pretty good. You know, it's hard to get cookware that goes into a solar cooker. I find that the absolute cheapest prices, best deal, is that when you order your solar cooker, simply to order all of the cookware to go with it. Or if you're planning on using the solar cooker for drying, you have the option of buying kits for drying things. You know, sun-dried tomatoes, peppers, things like that. And we have done that before too. I actually cheated on that. I got what they call one of those cookie trays. It's like a little grill that you set on your table so that the cookies you bake can be cooled off. Now the reason we're going to put the cheese at the end that we're rolling towards is when the cheese melts, it's going to hold all this together. I've actually made wraps in the past that were so sloppy you couldn't eat out of them because everything just fell apart. So the cheese is a really good deal. The bean dip I made the other night, we've actually eaten on it already. And what we did was we just heated it up with some, when we got the bean dip in, we put it in the refrigerator because we weren't ready to eat it. Well, that night we microwaved it for a little while with some cheese curds in it. So some of this actually has cheese already in it. You can see it kind of in there a little bit. And that was our snack, just to eat those nacho chips in this stuff. And basically this is going to end up being like a nacho chip that's already got the dip on it. It looks like this little tray that we're going to put in the cooker can hold about 7 or 8 of these. So we'll cram 8 in there just so that they're nice and it's nice and full. And also having an even number means that me and my wife don't got to fight over who gets the extra one. Although it wouldn't be much of a fight. She's usually pretty good about letting her big giant man eat the extra. Because these things are raw, you gotta be careful rolling them up or they'll break. There's our 8 wraps. When I started filling these wraps up, it was really sunny out here, but now it's really overcast, and solar cookers don't work on cloudy days, but the clouds are moving pretty quick, and all we really need is about 30 minutes of sunshine to get these done, because that thermometer is going to go up to about 100 degrees really quick, even with the clouds. So when the sun does come out, it doesn't have to start from scratch. Everything will be kind of warm. And it shouldn't take very much time of actual sunlight for these things to bake. They don't take a lot of cooking. Nothing much going on right now. All I'm doing is crisping up some stale cheese puffs and a few little bits and pieces of some baked pecans that I'll let go stale. If I was to light up my oven to do this, it would cost more for the electricity to power the oven than what this stuff is worth. Or I could wait around till the next time I use the oven and just stick this in there with it. But with a solar cooker, if you get something stale, you just stick it in there. You don't even think about it. All right, let's check and see if this stuff got crisp. Yep, that is, I put it in extremely stale. I'm getting it out extremely unstale. Now I'm not even going to try them pecans because that's hardly any left there, and I want to put them on my salad. If I eat one of them, I won't even be able to taste them in my salad. Something that we seem to do quite regularly is go to sleep without preparing for the next day. I did have one meal prepared for the solar cooker, but I got up rather early. It was very sunny, and I thought it would be a good day to do 2 meals in one day. So I got some frozen chicken leg quarters out and put them in the car. This car will be a lot warmer than just sitting on the kitchen cabinet, and we should be able to get these done today, because when I finally do get the other meal out of the cooker and get this in, it'll already be thawed out and probably about 150 degrees. This is the chicken you just saw in my car thawing out. Now I put it in the car so that it would thaw it out, warm it up, and would allow me to cook it in a lot less time, because half my day is gone. It's about 12 o'clock, so we've got about 4 hours of good usable sun. This will get cooked way before that. If you've noticed, I've put my seasoning on there, and this time around I just went ahead and used Cajun seasoning. And if you notice, even though the chicken's thawed out and it is fitting in the pot, it's a few inches above the pot, but that's not an issue because our domed lid covers it all up quite well. Now that it's seasoned and in the pot, it's ready to go into the cooker. I actually fell asleep and skipped checking this thing at 1 hour, but it did come out at a half an hour, and things look like they're going okay. And there is a little bit of clouds up there right now, so this should be just about what we want. There's what our stuff is looking like, and this time around the carrots and the potatoes and the chicken all became done at the same time. Sometimes it seems to me that the vegetables are still a little hard when the chicken is done, and if you wait till the vegetables are cooked, the chicken gets overcooked. But this came out perfect, and I guess it just depends on the size of the piece of chicken and the size of your potatoes and carrots. But I'm gonna go eat now. Today's solar meal is gonna be hummus. Hummus is a product that's getting more and more popular pretty much everywhere. It's a little bit pricey, but you can buy the dry chickpeas or garbanzo beans really cheap. It seems like this was about $1 for this bag, and it'll make a whole lot of hummus. I've got that can sitting there to show you that if you cook garbanzo beans until they're soft, they're good in a salad. And this is a 4-bean salad, which basically is a 3-bean salad, traditional 3-bean salad with garbanzo beans added. But we're gonna overcook these and mash them to make hummus. Now I don't have any of the spices here. Traditionally hummus is made with Middle Eastern spices because it's a Middle Eastern dish. But for me it normally ends up being garlic powder, salt, and olive oil, because we're just going to cook these down until they're really soft. We're not going to make them soupy. We're going to add water as needed, and then we'll use these garbanzo beans in their form of hummus for a dip. I've been checking these garbanzo beans periodically to make sure that they had enough water, and they did. In fact, they're a little bit wet because they've gotten to the point where they're edible and they no longer have to be under the surface of the water. Get one here. See, it's soft enough. This is basically how I like them cooked for salad, and in fact, while I'm out here this time, I'm going to go ahead and get some to set aside for a salad later on. But we're going to leave the rest of them in here because even though they're soft enough to go ahead and smash into hummus now, I like the cooker to do most of the work. If I leave them in there a little while longer, I won't have to reach in and smash them with my hands. I can just stir them up with a fork and it'll make them about the right consistency for hummus. But we'll come back in a minute and check on them again and probably bring them in the house. There's our garbanzo beans ready to be smashed, but before we smash them, I'm going to go ahead and drain off the liquid. I don't think I have too much liquid, but it's always easier to come back later and add this liquor, pot liquor, to the garbanzo beans than it is to get it out of the beans once they're smashed. If I smash them all up and it's too runny, I'm not going to be happy with that. But in a little while, we'll have these all smashed up. I'll have a little olive oil in there and some seasoning, and if the beans appears that they are too dry, I will return some of the liquid. Whatever liquid's left over will end up getting made into soup. Occasionally we'll have liquid that sits around too long in the fridge and we have to get rid of it, but even then we don't waste it. We'll pour it in a compost bin. Today, along with our solar meal, we're going to be making tea, sun tea, in a 1-gallon glass jug. Now normally it's not a big issue for me to just make tea in the house. All I have to do is run some hot water out of the tap, put it on the stove for a couple of minutes. But today this tea is going to be used to make a product called kombucha. Now the living organism that's used to start kombucha, which is a fermented tea, is supposed to be harmed when it has contact with metal, and that includes putting it into tea that was made in a metal container. And I don't know how true that is, but I like to take care of my kombucha SCOBY. And so we're just going to go ahead and continue making our kombucha using this glass jug out in the sun. Alright, today we're going to be baking homemade bread using our solar cooker, but we're going to be doing it in conjunction with a couple of other convenience appliances that I regularly use. My bread machine and my rice cooker. This is the pot from our rice cooker. It's got some leftover rice from yesterday. And we're going to be making rice bread. I don't know of anybody else that makes rice bread, but here's the recipe that I use. I normally don't waste my time with recipes because everybody knows what I'm doing, but probably people don't know what I'm doing here. And when you get down to the egg, 1 cup of egg plus water, what that means is you put a egg in a measuring cup and then top it off with water. Just bring it up to a cup. It's 1.5 teaspoons of salt, 2 teaspoons of yeast, 1 tablespoon of sugar, 3 tablespoons of oil, 1 cup of water with an egg in it, and 3 cups of flour with 1 cup of cooked rice. Now the reason I like this bread machine, I got a bread machine for about... The first bread machine I purchased was probably 15 years ago, and they had just come out. It was about $250. I love my bread machine so much, but they all have a common flaw. They're only designed to make about 100 loaves of bread before they break. And the reason for that is that the people that invented the bread machine realized that it was a fad and that most people would never use them, so they'd never find out that what they purchased was a piece of junk. But fortunately, because of that, most of these get bought as Christmas gifts for somebody that has everything, and they're never used. And 5 years after they're purchased, they end up at Goodwill for $5 to $10. And that's where we have gotten the last 7 of ours, because they do break quite often, and it's not a big deal to take and get a new $10 bread machine every year or so. Now, when you go to purchase a used bread machine, the first thing you need to do is make sure the paddle's in there. Because I've noticed bread machines at the Goodwill with no paddle. And then make sure that the paddle turns, because that's another problem that happens a lot of times, is that they lock up and then that's it, they're useless. But if those things work, generally all the electronics is going to work. It's going to bake bread. And we are actually not going to bake bread with it today. Every bread machine has a dough setting. So we're going to put all our ingredients in just like we're baking bread, but we're going to put it on the dough setting so that the alarm goes off as soon as the dough is mixed, and we can just pour it into our bread pans. Now that we've got our dough in our bread pans and we've got our bread pans in the solar cooker, we're going to shut this thing up, point it at the sun, and in about an hour and a half we'll have fresh homemade bread. Now, I do have a word of warning about baking bread. Most of the things you bake in your solar cooker, you bake in a covered dish that stays under constant positive pressure as the ingredients are heating up. But with bread in an open pan, you're not under constant pressure, and so what happens is anything that's in your cooker will flavor your bread. In fact, when you first get your machine will flavor your bread. And what I'm saying is, if you spill some red beans in your solar cooker, or even just from cooking your red beans in a solar cooker, if you bake bread the next day, it'll taste like beans. And if you have a brand new solar cooker, which smells like anything else brand new, like brand new car, brand new furniture, brand new appliances, then your bread will taste like a solar cooker. It's always best to use your solar cooker for about a month before you attempt to bake bread. I'm just letting you know, because the first time I did bread in a solar cooker, it shocked me. I was a little bit disappointed, and I was worried that that's the way my bread would always taste, and it didn't. Now when I bake bread, it just tastes like homemade baked bread. All right, my whole neighborhood smells like homemade bread, so I'm guessing that we're done here. Yeah, that's way done. Mom always says you thump it to find out if it's ready or not, and it's ready. So we'll bring it on in the house and have a little homemade bread. And there's a finished product. Got a couple of loaves of homemade bread. Very, very delicious. I can't even taste what I cooked yesterday on this bread. So that's a success. And if you're gonna make homemade bread, you really, really need to have real, actual butter to put on it if you want it to be just right. Another thing I highly recommend is one of these serrated bread knives. If you want to successfully cut a loaf of bread without smushing it, you need one of these. Today's solar meal is baby butter beans cooked with a little bit of garlic powder and 4 bouillon cubes. It's about 1 pound of butter beans. And on top we've got sausage links of duck and pork sausage. And if you notice at the bottom of the cooker, I've got the reflectors locked down with a little thumb screw because it's a little bit windy today. Anytime it's a little windy, you need to lock down those reflectors because they can get all bent up if the wind picks up. What we're making in our solar cooker today is actually going to be spaghetti sauce. Now what you see in front of you is 2 chicken leg quarters that are frozen solidly together. And if you were grilling a couple of chicken leg quarters, you wouldn't want to put frozen leg quarters on the grill, because what happens, you get a burnt chicken that's still raw inside. But we're making spaghetti sauce, and we're using the solar cooker, which is going to slowly get it up to temperature, meaning that it'll still cook evenly. And since we're using it in a spaghetti sauce, it's not as critical that we get a crispy outside and a tender inside or anything like that. So we're going to go ahead and put the lid on this and let these chicken leg quarters cook until we can go ahead and pick the meat off the bones. My chicken's done, so I brought it in the house and got it out of the pot so that I can pick the meat off the bones. It's going to take about 15 minutes for this to get cool enough for me to comfortably remove that meat. So during that time, we're going to go ahead and put these vegetables out there. And when I say vegetables, what I mean is celery, onions, bell peppers, and there's even some tomato in there. We never actually buy fresh tomatoes to make spaghetti sauce. We always use our fresh tomatoes in salad, but sometimes we don't get around to using them all because we buy big bulk packages of tomatoes. And so when the tomatoes start to get overripe, we cut them up and freeze them, and I never use frozen tomatoes in a salad. You know what I mean. But in any case, we're going to go ahead and put these vegetables out there in the drippings from the chicken. And when the vegetables are done, we'll add the chicken meat along with our paste, tomato paste, and our seasoning, salt, pepper, garlic, things of that nature. Now that I'm finished getting all the meat off the chicken, I've gone ahead and got the celery, onions, bell peppers, and tomatoes and brought them in. And they look like they're pretty much cooked the way I want them to be cooked. I don't like my stuff to be mush. I like a little bit of texture to my sauce. And I'm going to go ahead and add my chicken. And I'm going to go ahead and add my sauce. Now, if you notice, I don't have much sauce here. That's because this is what actually started this whole thing out. Every time I make pizzas, there's no way in the world to get the exact right amount of sauce. And you don't want to just use all of your sauce on your pizza. You end up with basically soup on a bun. So we put enough sauce on. What's left over seems to always motivate us to make spaghetti the next day. So I'm going to add this. And then after I add that, I'm going to look at it and see what else, how much more tomato sauce it needs, or tomato paste, or even sometimes we'll just use a can of diced or crushed tomatoes, and then season it to taste with things like oregano, basil, garlic, things like that. Today's solar meal is basically just another continuation of a solar meal we made a couple of days ago. Over here we have our pinto beans, which we made a whole bunch of them. Normally a small pot like this one right here, you would make 1 pound of dry beans, and it'll absolutely fill that pot up. But we had a 2-pound bag, so we used this big pot, and it's a lot of beans. So the first meal we had, we simply took some of the beans with some sausage, put them on rice, and that was our meal. Today we're going to have pork and beans. And pork and beans in general are always going to be made of pre-cooked beans and some condiments like ketchup and mustard and barbecue sauce and sugar. You put sugar in them. Or you can just take tomato paste and sugar. There's 100 different ways to make them. But in any case, what we're doing today, we've cut up a package of hot dog weenies, and we'll eat on this for a few days. And I put some bacon in there, and we're also, while we're heating these up, because they're already cooked, you could just eat it like that if you wanted to, but while we're heating this up, we're going to go ahead and put some pork country style ribs on top. So that way when our country style ribs are done, our pork and beans will be done. And we may eat our pork and beans with our ribs, or we may eat one for lunch and one for supper. Anyway, we're simply going to put our pork country style ribs on top of our beans and add a little seasoning. And as usual, the seasoning I'm going to be putting on this meat is going to be salt, pepper, and garlic powder. I think I can stick one more in there. Oh, some little bitty ones. Yeah, I can stick these in. Actually putting 2 more in here. Alright, now we'll put a little seasoning on. Oh yeah, that's going to be peppery. A lot of that's going to cook off, and we're not doing anything on the other side because they're in contact with beans. And salt is swamp salt, which is basically the same as any other store-bought salt. And for me, I have to rub this around because, we live in the swamp, which makes our salt all stick together and come out in big chunks instead of, evenly spaced. And still, you're going to get some salty bites and less salty bites, but it's going to be wonderful. Now, if you're going to cook a whole lot of different things, like a very complicated 6-course meal, you're going to need either more than one solar cooker, or you're going to have to do some of your meals in a different way. This is going to be, as already said, it's pork country style ribs, which is its own meal, not necessarily to be eaten with what's underneath it, but we probably will. Underneath is pork and beans, or baked beans, Boston baked beans, beanie weenie, people call it a lot of different things, barbecue beans. And you'll have to do that a lot with solar cooking. Everything has to be kind of like a casserole, or either multiple items cooked together. Now sometimes you can get away with having multiple items in the cooker at the same time. These cookers are rather small. You could push this meal aside and set just to wrap a baked potato in aluminum foil and bake it in there at the same time. But a lot of times we'll do things, multiple items, and we don't even put them in the cooker. We'll just microwave them. Or we'll do like this can here. This is just a plain old can of corn. It's already cooked. You don't have to bring it to a boil or heat it up enough to soften it. All you got to do is bring it up to room temperature, and that's only by tradition. You can eat that cold, but it's just a regular American tradition that you eat canned corn hot. So you can put that in the sun. By the time we get the meal out, that'll be pretty doggone hot, about 150 degrees, which is plenty hot enough for some canned corn. The sun has gone away, but I do believe that my stuff got cooked before that happened. And there you have it. There's our pork steaming. And yes, it looks very, very done. So there's our pork country style ribs on top of our pork and beans. And so I'm going to take that in and we are going to eat. But also, my can of corn is ready. And my next meal is ready to go in. We'll have that this evening. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I understand that if you found this video, you were doing a search for the video, and probably your reasons for wanting to cook with a solar oven involve sustainability, love for the earth, and use of resources. However, I hope from this video you also learned that it is just better to cook in a solar cooker. The food tastes better. I can't think of anything that you can't cook in a solar cooker that tastes at least as good as what you can cook in the house. And in most cases, it's better, and it's exponentially better. So if you're trying to make a decision about whether or not to purchase a solar cooker, just know that if you have got any reasoning abilities whatsoever, once you start using it, you will never want to go back to cooking on electric or gas equipment again. In fact, on days when it's raining, you're going to be upset that you can't cook with your solar cooker. If you don't want to survive, don't listen to me.